Okay, I'm just going to spend 2 minutes backtracking. I hope everybody will forgive me. Okay, I just hit the record button. We asked the question of this Mishnah, which says that any love that is dependent upon a factor, when the factor goes, then the love goes also. And when it's not dependent upon a factor, then the love will endure. And an example of love that was dependent upon a factor is the love of Amnon and Tamar. Amnon and Tamar were two of the children of David HaMelech. They were half siblings to each other. Amnon had a desire for Tamar. He ended up requiting his desire, having relations with her, actually raping her. And then in the end, he ended up getting killed by Tamar's full brother. He had a desire for her, and after he had requited his desire, so then there was only hatred that existed between him and Tamar. And then the Mishnah gives an example of love that is dependent upon a factor, that is not dependent upon a factor, and that's the love of David and Jonathan. This love of David and Jonathan, that were the Navi describes them as incredibly close friends. Their souls were tied into each other. It was not a sexual relationship, as many scholars want to say, but it was a very deep relationship. We wondered then why the Mishnah needs to teach me this. We wondered why. What is an avat tluya b'davar? What is a love that is dependent upon a factor? We wondered also that every love is dependent on some factor because it's got to begin somewhere. And the way to start it off is by being attracted to something. So there is some davar, there is something that is totally that the love is dependent in. So, and what is the real message of this Mishnah? What's it trying to teach me? To begin, we're going to look at the Rambam. At Maimonides is his statement in Yesodei Torah, in the Fundamentals of Torah, in the second chapter. Says the Rambam, Ha'el nichbad va'nora hazeh, that this awesome God, mitzvah la'avo u'liyiroso, it is a mitzvah to love God and to fear God. Shenamar, as it says, v'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, as it says, you have to love the Lord your God. V'namar, and it says, es Hashem Elokecha tira, as it says, the Lord your God you shall fear. How do you get to that place of love and fear and awe of God? Says the Rambam, when a person looks at the deeds of God, uberu of, and the things he created, hanifloyim agedolim, with awesomeness and with incredible things, the yira mehen, and he is in awe of them, then the chachmaso she'ein lo erech, and he realizes the wisdom of God in the way that he's created his world, locates that it is endless wisdom and endless awesomeness. Miyad hu oev u'mishabeach u'mifayer u'misave tava gedola. Immediately a person is going to love and praise and desire, of deep desire, leido Hashem HaGadol, to know God. Kemosha Amar David, like David said in his Psalms, Tzom on nafshi le'lokim le'elchai, that my soul thirsts for God, for the everlasting living God. So the Rambam is saying that when a person looks out at the world and sees the awesomeness of the world, when you see the complexities of a human being, when you see the depth of the Torah, when you recognize the things that God created, how incredible they are, by definition, you are ignited to feel a sense of connection to God. Well, the truth is that there are many things that are awesome in the world, many machines that are awesome. We don't necessarily have a taiva to connect to them. We don't have a desire to connect to them. I think what the Rambam is teaching us is that when we look at, when we recognize the awesomeness of God, when we recognize what God represents and what God means, so then by definition, our souls are attracted to God. And that our souls want nothing more than a connection to God. You know, a lot of the reason that we have difficulty with mitzvahs, and we have difficulty with feeling some of these feelings of Avos Hashem, of loving God, is because we don't recognize the depth of God. We look at his Torah as being something we have to follow. We look at Judaism as being something that's wonderful. It's amazing to us, but we don't recognize that it's more than that. It's something that we desire to be connected to. And the more we see, I look at the picture behind Martin Pomensky, that beautiful sunset. The more we look at that and we recognize that what God has given us, the beauty that God has given us, the design that God has given us, how God is so concerned with us, and that he is so all encompassing and amazing. The more we put that into the mix, then by definition, the more we feel connected to him. Ultimately, what the word Ava means, what the word love means, is it means a desire to connect. We expect that when we look for a definition of the word love, we find some kind of mushy-gushy kind of explanation of what love really is. They made a movie out of this. Love means never having to say you're sorry. It's like Titman Tova. That's not love. What love is the desire to connect that every human being has, both on a soul level and on a physical level. And the danger becomes when you stop at the physical level and you don't enter in to the soul level, to the connection of a soul to a soul, but you stop at the connection of a body to a body. Now, there is no question that there needs to be a physical connection. That doesn't mean, by the way, a sexual connection. That's in a relationship that can be a sexual relationship. Then that's, of course, then that has to be inserted. That has to be understood. But in any relationship, the relationship, for it to be a real relationship, for it to be a relationship that is a real connection, it has to be on a soul level. How do you have a connection with a person on a soul level that's not your spouse? And that's a man or a woman. When you see and recognize in that person the awesomeness of the person, that you want to connect to that. You identify with what a person has. You identify with the qualities that a person has. And those qualities, that desire to identify, that is called Ava. That is love. That's connection. We use that word love. Rabbi Tursky, Zechat Tzaddik V'Kodesh V'Rach, used to say that, if you love, and it was a famous thing, everybody says it, I've said it hundreds of times in Shurim, that, when a person says, I love fish, if you really loved fish, then you would throw it back into the sea. You wouldn't eat it. If you loved it, then you would feel some kind of connection to it. Well, the truth is, I think you do. You do, and you're using the word in the right way. I do love fish. I happen not to, but when a person does, and they say, I love fish. So what a person is saying is that I love what fish does for me. And that is unquestionably the beginning of a relationship. There has to be some sense of appreciation of a person, of appreciation of what a person does for you, appreciating what a thing does for you. There is that is a real connection to something on a physical level. That I appreciate the beauty of something. I appreciate the joy of something, the pleasure of something. The problem is not when it starts there. The problem is when it ends there. And when it ends there, and that's the sum total of the relationship, is I love what you do for me, not I love you for who you are, but for what you do for me. So then that's when a relationship is doomed, because that's called a relationship that is teluya b'davar. It's dependent upon a factor. We see this by Yaakov and Esav and their parents. The Torah tells us that Yitzchak loved Esav, and that Rivka loved Yaakov. When it describes the love of Yitzchak to his son Esav, it says that he loved him in the past tense, and it says he loved him because he was tzayid befiv, because he put food in his mouth. And when it talks about the love of Rivka to her son Yaakov, it says she loves him in the present and future tense, and it says no reason why she loves him. And from there we can understand the principle clearly, that why did she love him? For no reason other than she loved who he was. And Yitzchak, for a variety of reasons, but loved Esav, but it was wrapped up in what Esav did for him. And therefore that was an Ava Tuluya Bedavar. Now, was Yitzchak a bad guy? No. He was at that point in his life perhaps only capable of an Ava Tuluya Bedavar, of a love that was dependent upon a factor. And it was also that he was allowing it to be dependent upon a factor so that he could get into the kishkas of his son and perhaps affect the change inside of him. For whatever the reason was, that was the type of love that it was. The Torah writes that love in past tense because that love can't endure. But the love that is dependent upon the soul of a person, upon the essence of a person, that is the kind of love that will endure. Think about relationships, not your spouses. It's not, that sometimes gets a little bit raw and deep. But think about relationships that you have. Unfortunately, many relationships are dependent upon things in the sense that they are just on a level that, you make me feel good when I'm with you. You say nice things to me. I enjoy being with you. You never give me a hard time. You seem to understand me. You seem to get me. But it's really bad. If you stop to think about it, it's really about me. And it's about what I'm getting from you in a relationship, which is a great thing. But it's not really about the value of you. And if it is about the value of you, we haven't often articulated that, not in our own minds, nor to the other person. In other words, the relationship stays on a level of, I enjoy being with you because I don't even recognize that the reason I enjoy being with you is because I enjoy being around people like you. I enjoy experiencing things with people like you. Why do I like to sit next to you in shul? Not because you tell me that I'm a good person, you make me feel good, but we hope. But it's because I appreciate the way you daven. I appreciate it, not because I know I could pick up all the latest lashon hara from you, during davening. Right? That's not why I want to sit next to you. I want to sit next to you because your energy is great, because I want to attach to you. That's called love. And the more of your energy that I want to attach to, the more of your essence that I want to attach to, so then the deeper is the love. The Torah tells us, we mentioned that there are only 3 places that it tells us we have to love. Love people, love converts, and love God. The Torah tells us that you have to love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. That means, what has to come first? V'ahavta li're'acha. Re'acha means your friend. So that means you first have to have friendship, and then once you have friendship, now you can apply ava, love, to that friendship. V'ahavta li're'acha. You have to love to your reya, to the person you already have a friendship with. Now you can love that person. At a Shabbat brachas, we give a bracha to the chassan and kala, and the bracha that we give to the chassan and kala, that they should achieve ahava, achva, shalom, v'reyos. Ahava is love, achva is brotherhood, shalom, peace, and reyos, friendship. Did you catch that? What's the first thing that we bless them with? They should have ahava. They should have love. And then eventually reach reyos, friendship. Wait a second. In the Torah it says, v'ahavta l'recha kamecha. You got to start with reyos, then you throw love into it. And in the bracha that we give a chassan and kala, a brand new bride and groom, we say to them, you should start with reyos, and then you start with ahava, with love, and then achieve reyos. That's the exact opposite of the model that was presented in the Torah. What's going on here? So I think that it's fair to say that there are 2 types of reyos. There are 2 types of friendship. There's a friendship where you feel a connection to a person, but you're not willing to let yourself completely be exposed and vulnerable to that person. And again, recognize when I use the word relationship, I'm not only talking about marriage. But I'm also not talking about relationships between men and women. Right? That's a whole nother story. We talked about that in the very beginning of Pitkei Avos. I just learned this today in Mesil Shasharim, that we're not talking about the relationships between a man and a woman on this deep level. This is a problem when it reaches this deep level. This level of ava, this very profound kind of ava, if that person is not your spouse. But I'm talking about every relationship. And you'll see this clear in a few minutes, but in every single relationship, there is a sense of connection. You very much enjoy being around this person, spending Shabbos with this person, going out for coffee with this person, being involved family to family with this person, because you feel that they have some real good quality, but you still feel a certain sense of an inability to be able to completely open up with them. To that, the Torah tells us, that's a reya, that's a very good friend. But that's a friend that is not on the depth level, a soul connection. What do you need for that? V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You have to throw love into that. Meaning you have to focus on the essence of the person and attach and connect to who they really are, what their values really are, what their essence really is. And then you can develop a full relationship. And that's the bracha that we give to a chassan and kala. We turn to a bride and a groom and we say to them, you have right now a certain sense of ava, but the ava that you have is a low-level ava. Add onto that achva, a sense of brotherhood, a sense of real connection, a sense of shalom, a sense of shleimus, wholeness, a desire to connect. And then you'll be able to reach the ultimate reyus, the ultimate connection, which is where you feel completely connected as one. That only comes from taking that ava, that lower level, from taking that sense of, I feel I'm seeing you inside of you, and developing that, adding things to that, strengthening that, so that it becomes the ultimate in reus, it becomes the ultimate in friendship. And the ultimate in friendship is when you and I are connected because I know who you are. And I am attracted to who you are. And I am connected to who you are. This, by the way, when you turn it into marriage, is an important concept also in a marriage. Marriage is a classic example, especially in the modern world we live in, of Ava Teluya B'Davar, of Amnon and Tamar, of things that are based on physical desires and physical attractions. And very often, we never even get to the place of being connected to the soul of the other person. To tell over a beautiful story of Rabbi Herman, wrote a book about him, All for the Boss. And Ruchama Shane, his daughter, wrote this story. She said that she and her new husband were sitting with their parents. They'd gone for a walk in the park, whatever, and they sat down on a bench. And the parents were sitting a little apart from each other. And the newlywed couple was sitting very close to each other. So this girl said to her parents, she said, isn't it funny that the new ones sit closer to each other than the ones who have been married for so long? So Rabbi Herman turned to them and said that you're still trying to navigate your relationship. He says you haven't yet become so close. So you need that physical attachment, that physical closeness in order to be able to testify that there is a closeness, in order to be able to feel that closeness. He said, we've had many, many years and many, many experiences with each other. We don't need those constant reminders to feel that we are completely connected to each other. And if you think about the depth of connection, when a person has that sense of connection, it of course manifests itself in a physical way. That's part of the Torah, is what it's meant to be. But that is almost like a second thing. But that the connection on the level of a heart to a heart and a soul to a soul, so then that really is the primary connection that exists after the relationship has reached a level of depth. What's the ultimate separator between people? What rips people apart? Themselves. When I'm focused on me, then nothing is right in the world. Nothing is right with you either, if I'm focused on me. If it's all about what I'm receiving, if it's all about what I'm getting, then everything is wrong. But if I'm focused on what I am giving, everything is amazing. I actually, when I counsel chasanim and kalas, brides and grooms that are to be married, one of the things that I tell them is that there is going to be a sexual relationship in their life, and it is a very important, as I mentioned a moment ago, very important thing. The way to receive the most pleasure is by giving pleasure. And that the more focused you are on somebody else's pleasure, the more pleasurable it is for you. And when you're focused on your pleasure, you are always disappointed, because it's never going to live up to the fantasy in your mind of what you think this should be, of the expectation in your mind. It's never going to live up to that. And therefore you will always be disappointed. The way, and this is true not only of a sexual relationship, this is true again of all relationships, that the more that I am focused on you, and I'm focused on who you are and what you represent, and the gift of having you in my life, so then the more of a connection I feel to you. This is true of God. This is true of people. This is true of our children. This is true of every relationship that we have. The more I appreciate you for you, the greater is the connection that exists between the two of us. That's what happened with Amnon and Tamar. With Amnon and Tamar, the focus was totally on themselves. The focus was totally on, well, I shouldn't throw Tamar into this, but Amnon was totally on what he was going to receive, not what he was going to give, not what he was going to even receive on a level of a soul level, on a depth level, on a level of who Tamar really was. It was what Tamar could give him, but it was about him. And the importance of studying that section of Tanakh is, speaking about it here in the Mishnah, is to understand what selfishness does to a person, what it can turn into. The hatred, that what was once love can turn into hatred, because it was never about the other person. It was only about ourselves. This Mishnah is not teaching me love advice. Let me just, I'm sorry, Yonatan and Tamar and David. The relationship of Yonatan and David, which, like I mentioned, modern scholars can't understand that you can have a relationship like that without it being sexual on some level. You can. When you focus on the other person, when you are so amazed by who that person is, and you are completely attracted to that person, that doesn't need to go any further than that. There can be relationships like that. There can be relationships between women, relationships between men, which are completely focused on the value of who that other person is. And that was the relationship of David and Yonatan. That, by the way, is the relationship between us and God. You know, when it says, V'ahavta Hashem l'kecha, you have to love the Lord your God, what are the next words? B'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol miyodecha. What does b'chol miyodecha mean? B'chol levavcha, with all your heart, b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul or all your life, Even if they're willing to, if they're going to take away your life, you're willing to give up for God. And b'chol ma'odecha, how do we translate b'chol ma'odecha? With all of your might, all of your resources, all your physical things. There's another explanation. Our sages bring down b'chol ma'odecha means b'chol midah u'midah. With every characteristic, everything that God throws at you, you still love him. Because it's not about how comfortable or not comfortable you are in this world. It's about recognizing the essence of God being the all-powerful, of God being the Almighty, the one who is controlling everything, who is laying out everything. No matter whether it's comfortable for me or it's not comfortable for me, that doesn't matter because it's not about me. It's about recognizing God, not because I love what he does for me, but because I love the God itself, the essence of God. And that I feel connected to a God that has created a world like this and that is in control of a world like this. I think that this Mishnah is giving me an integral piece of the puzzle. And an integral piece of the puzzle is you want to make yourself a better person. You want to reach certain levels of tzidkus, of righteousness. You want to control your personality. Stop focusing on you. See the world deeper than just its physical veneer and see things on a soul level, on a deeper level. Because when you see things on a soul level, you're going to see things that you like, and you're going to see some things that you don't like either. And you'll have to learn how to deal with them. But you're going to see things on a level of depth and of reality, not just seeing things superficially. Why don't people change themselves? Why do people have a difficulty undergoing change, taking their lives? And I've seen this from people that I'm close to, and it always amazes me when I see people get a hold of themselves and change direction in life. But where does that come from? That comes from the ability to look beyond the surface into the depths of things and to ask themselves the question, who am I? What am I doing? And what direction is my life going in? This is true in our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to God, our relationship to other people. We have to be looking into the depths of things. And when we look into the depths of things, that's when we have a fighting chance to make a difference. And I think that that's what the Mishnah is here. This is not a Dear Abby Mishnah, giving us a little love advice, right? How do you spice up your marriage? Now, I don't think that's what it's talking about. I think what it's saying, what it's telling us is it's talking to us about the way we approach things, the way we look at things. I could give so many examples. You go to the Grand Canyon and you're amazed by the beauty of the Grand Canyon. You're almost awestruck. The thing is so amazingly beautiful. But what you're looking at is a beautiful formation of mountains like a picture. And you say, wow, this is incredible. Look at what nature did over millions of years, how it formed these incredibly beautiful canyons. You missed the point. You stopped at the surface. It is beautiful, and yes, nature did this. But mi bara elu, who created all this? Who created the nature that would work in millions of years and create this incredible, incredible view? And when you do that, you have to recognize it's not just with God you do that. You do that with so many things. Why aren't we bursting with appreciation for the things that people give to us? Bursting. There are people, by the way, that are, but for the most people, we're not bursting with it. We appreciate it, but we're not bursting because we look at what this means for me, not what did the other person do to do this for me. You know, I don't want to run over time, but I'll tell you an amazing thing. A kohen comes off the bima after he gave a bracha, right? He gave iduchend, and he gave birchas kohenim. He comes down. Now, a kohen is not allowed to not go up. He's obligated to go up. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. He has to bless the people. Okay, so what he's doing is he's doing what God commanded him to do. When he comes down, what do we say to him? Yasher koach kohen. Yasher koach. What do you mean Yasher koach? Like, good job, thanks. You did a good job. What do you mean good job? He did what he had to do. You know, we don't go to a person saying, Shkoyach, I just caught you breathing. Shkoyach, right? You have to breathe. You want to stay alive, you breathe. God said, give it the bracha, give the bracha. You didn't do anything for me. No, because when you're focused on what the other person was doing, then they didn't do anything for you. They were fulfilling a commandment. But if you focus on the depth of what they were doing, with love, they were standing there and they were giving something to you, and you were blessed by a person who has a kedusha inside of them, like it or not. Religious or not, they have a kedusha inside of them, and you were benefiting from that when you see the depths of what just happened. So then an amazing thing just happened. I was blessed, and I was given a blessing by a person, and he let that flow from him, and he let God's blessing flow from him, and I received that. That's what happens when you look into the depths of things. When you live on the surface, then it's all about just you and pleasure. When you live deeper, it's about value. And that's what the Mishna is trying to teach us. Live with the value. Don't just live with pleasure. Every relationship has to start with some kind of pleasure. But when it stays there, that's when it grinds to a halt. When it deepens, when it intensifies, that's when it becomes the premier relationship in the Torah. The human relationship that we can focus on is the relationship of David and Yehonasan, where two souls were completely enmeshed and entwined with each other. Okay. Beautiful. We'll stop there. And Mirz Hashem, next week we will. Oh, another beauty. Next week is Machlokes L'Shem Shamayim, fighting with people for the right reasons. I thought fighting with people was no good. What does it mean? Machlokes L'Shem Shamayim, Machlokes for the sake of heaven. It's a great Mishnah. Okay. Everybody should have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing week. And we'll see you. Mirz Hashem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
It's always wonderful to see everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, Daf Yomi, guys, I'm just going to get my Gemara. Okay, let me stop the recording.